Good morning, everyone. I am Leslie Hope Ilovenko, and for today, together with my group mates Mary Rose Alegre and Norme Kyla Henovania, we will be presenting about the Toxic Substances and Hazardous Nuclear Waste Control Act of 1990, also known as the Republic Act 6969. But before we proceed with our topic, let us first have a little recap of what we have discussed on our previous report, which is the global warming. Global warming and climate change are not new to us. These are some of the major environmental issues that the world is facing. These are due to human activities, primarily the burning of fossil fuels. Population growth, along with increasing consumption, tends to increase emissions of climate changing greenhouse gases. Ecosystem perturbations driven by climate change have direct human impacts, including reduced water supply and quality, the loss of iconic species and landscapes, distorted rhythms of nature, and the potential for extreme events to overwhelm the regulating services of ecosystems. Okay, so we have here the causes as well as the effects of global warming. So for the causes, we have here the deforestation and the industrialization. The effects includes the melting of glaciers and the rise in sea levels. With this, the Congress of the Republic of the Philippines created the Republic Act 6969, which is an act to control toxic substances and hazardous nuclear wastes, providing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes. Now let's get to know Republic Act 6969 more. As what I've said earlier, Republic Act 6969 is an act to control toxic substances and hazardous and nuclear wastes, providing penalties for violations thereof and for other purposes. This act is commonly known as the Toxic Substances and Hazardous Nuclear Waste Control Act of 1990. The act was carried out to control, supervise, and regulate activities on toxic chemicals and hazardous waste. Under this act, the importation, manufacture, processing, handling, storage, transportation, sale, distribution, use and disposal of all unregulated chemical substances and mixtures in the Philippines, as well as the entry even in transit or storage and disposal of hazardous and nuclear waste are regulated.
Hi, so here's are the objectives of RA 6969. So to keep an inventory of chemicals that are presently being imported, manufactured or used, indicating among others their existing and possible uses, test data, names of firms manufacturers are using them, and such other information as may be considered relevant to the protection of health and the environment. And the other one of these objectives are to monitor and regulate the importation, manufacture, processing, handling, storage, transportation, sales, distribution, as well as the use and disposal of chemical substances and mixtures that present unreasonable risk or injury to health or to the environment in accordance with the national policies and international commitments. And one of it as well is to inform and educate the, p- the populace regarding the hazards and the risks attendant to the manufacture, handling, storage, transportations, processing, distribution, use, and disposal of toxic chemicals in other substances and mixtures, and lastly, which is to prevent the entry, even in transit, as well as the keeping or storage and disposal of hazardous and nuclear waste into into the country for whatever purposes. Here are some of the penalties if we didn't abide the law under RA 6969. First, the penalty of imprisonment of 6 months and 1 day to 6 years and 1 day, and a fine ranging from 600 pesos up to 4,000 pesos shall be imposed upon any person who shall violate Section A to 13A to C of this Act, and shall not be covered by the probation law. If offender is a foreigner, he or she shall be deported and barred from any subsequent entry into the Philippines after serving his or her sentence. The second one is the penalty of imprisonment of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years shall be imposed upon any person who shall violate Section 13D of this Act, as well as if the offender is a foreigner, he or she shall be deported and barred from any subsequent entry into the Philippines after serving his or her sentence. And then the next one, every penalty imposed for the unlawful importation, entry, transfer, transportation, manufacture, processing, sale, or distribution of chemical substances or mixture into or within the Philippines shall carry with it the confiscation and forfeiture in favor of the government of the proceeds of the unlawful act and instruments, tools, or other improvements, including vehicles, sea vessels, and aircrafts used in or with which the offense was committed. So, chemical substances so confiscated and forfeited by the government at its option shall be turned over to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources for safekeeping and proper disposal. Lastly, the prison or firm responsible are connected with the bringing or importation into the country of hazardous or nuclear waste shall be under obligation to transport or send it back to said prohibited waste.
What wastes are considered as hazardous? Hazardous substances are substances which either short-term acute hazards such as acute toxicity by ingestion, inhalation, or skin absorption, corrosivity or other skin or eye contact hazards, or the risk of fire and explosion. Long-term environmental hazards including chronic toxicity upon repeated exposure. Carcinogenicity, which may in some cases result from acute exposure, but with a long latent period. Resistance to detoxification process such as biodegradation, the potential to pollute underground or surface waters, or aesthetically objectionable properties such as offensive odors. Hazardous wastes are hereby defined as substances that are without any safe commercial, industrial, agricultural, or economic usage and are shipped, transported, or brought from the country of origin for dumping or disposal into or in transit through any part of territory of the Philippines. Hazardous waste shall also refer to byproducts, side processes, residues, spent reaction media, contaminated plant or equipment, or other substances from manufacturing operation as consumer discard of manufactured products. Examples of hazardous waste: electronics and small appliances, batteries, fluorescent bulbs, paints, pest and garden, oil, gasoline, auto fluid, propane, and cleaners. Now let's answer this question. What are considered as nuclear waste? According to the law, nuclear waste are hazardous waste made radioactive by exposure to the radiation incidental to the production or utilization of nuclear fuels, but does not include nuclear fuels or radiotopes which have reached the final stage of operation so as to be usable for any scientific, medical, agricultural, commercial, or industrial. So here are some examples of nuclear waste.